Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, student friends, family, welcome to episode 96 of the Teacher Emilio podcast. I'm your host, Emilio. Finally, I was waiting for this interview so long. Finally, it's happening. The man is real. Tom, I'll tell you something, just to start. It's been 2 years since our debut on the episode on coffee. So, yeah, the episode we recorded, it was 2 years ago. It was about 2 years ago, probably like this week, sometime this week.
I thought I felt like that was in the middle of COVID, but...
It would have been in between any of the lockdowns.
Right, okay.
So yeah, look, it's finally happening, guys. Tom is real. Tom's back. We got really good feedback. So, my listeners, people on the internet, they love you.
The pressure's unbearable.
And I have to say that, unfortunately, by unmasking that some baristas may give, cappuccinos. Well, it was something like cappuccinos instead of flat whites. And now everyone is checking their coffees because of it.
Yeah, I gave away industry secrets. No, listen, just on that, if it's busy, you get what you get.
Exactly. And well, look, we've got a different topic this time. And as you know, Tom is also a teacher, someone who loves learning languages. And we touched on a bit on language learning last time. But this time we're going to talk a bit about relationships, love. But it's not the type of love that you think. Someone messaged me and said, hey, teacher, you should talk about having international relationships. And I thought, damn, it's been almost 100 episodes. And I think there is no episode on that. So I thought it would be cool to bring you in because we've got a few things in common. Well, one is, that you learned Spanish and, well, basically you are from Australia. I mean, right. I'm like a hybrid. I'm slowly turning into an Aussie, maybe, if I can say that. But, our wives, our partners are both from Japan. So we've got, I guess, that in common. So I thought it would be interesting because we've got a bit of a mix. So... Well, I gave a bit of an intro. Anything you would like to say to the audience before we begin?
No, I mean, it's really cool to be back. And I feel like, hi, people who are watching this in a visual format, and also, to our audio-only friends, both, you're probably the same people, but just in case there's...
Yeah, you'll be surprised. Thank you for the OGs who stay on Spotify. Some people only like Spotify, I don't know, maybe when they're driving or...
That's how
on the way to work.
That's how I do my podcast.
There you go.
100% Spotify.
But then there are others who are like, Emilio, you're on my list and I'm like competing with Joe Rogan and these other guys. So it's like, okay, look, I'm going to get there eventually. Sure. They've got like 3-4 hour episodes. But look, Tom, first of all, as an Aussie, quick question or question one, just to warm up. How does it feel? Can you tell us, how is it being with someone that is not from Australia?
I mean... In many ways, with my relationship with my wife, I'm aware, that she's not we're from different countries, from different cultures, but how has it been? It's very difficult to answer. It's like, how's the marriage? She's amazing. I love her. She's my best friend. She's, my partner. She's the mother to a wonderful mum to our 2 kids. But as far as her being from another country, that doesn't factor into my evaluation of how successful or not. I'll put it this way. In the early days of our relationship, when I was teaching at a private school, private college in the city, and when students, particularly Japanese students, found out that my, girlfriend or fiance at the time was Japanese, it was really common to get these questions like, why did you choose a Japanese person? And I'm like, you're asking the wrong question. I didn't choose her because she's Japanese. She is Japanese and awesome. It could have been, if you could put that same person into another person from another culture, I would have found her equally as charming. I think it wasn't her Japaneseness that made me fall in love with her.
It's interesting you mentioned that because, I would say not only with Japan, but with certain countries or cultures, it's you have to be from this place. But it sounds like that wasn't in your match list criteria. It was more like she ticked all the boxes.
She didn't even like me that much to start with. I had to work on that. But
there we go. Success story.
Yeah. I managed to turn her around. But yeah, it's not to say there haven't been episodes at times when our sort of different cultural backgrounds have created a bit of, I wouldn't even say difficulty. Probably at the start, there was probably some growing that we each had to do to sort of find out what that middle ground was between what the expectations were, like socially, as a romantic partner. And again, we can both only talk about our experience from the point of view of our own specific culture to the culture we happen to have formed a marriage with. But and there would be challenges that would affect other couples from other cultures that we perhaps don't.
It's a good point you mentioned that, because I'll give you one example, like something that sometimes could be a bit of a good culture shock, but sometimes not so good. It's like maybe when Latinos are overly friendly, which is good. And sometimes we need to learn how to gauge how friendly we're going to be, how much hugging we're going to do. I mean, say, for example, I remember, with friends here in Australia, it's different. But when my wife went to Venezuela, my family, like, too much love, let's say, but in a good way, in a good way. And then she's like, who are they? I'm like, they're my cousins. Just hug them. They love you. Just hug them. For them, your family. So, But in the flip side, sometimes it could be like, hey, on more of the negative side, it could be like being with friends or family. We could be like at a place or at home. And, my wife is like, I'm a bit tired. And that's the signal for maybe let's go home, or, and it could be both ways. It's not only because, it's her, she's from Japan. I have done that myself as well, But then it's funny because I would be like, damn, this is going to be at least an extra half an hour. I can't leave. I'm Latino. Right. It's tricky. It's like, what? We can't go just yet. So you're right. Sometimes you have to learn how to, I guess, that mix of compromising and also adjusting to each other.
Right. Actually, just on very, very quick story on that Latino tendency to be particularly physically friendly and stuff.
Yeah.
When I was teaching in Chile, like I was teaching in fairly large businesses. I'm not going to say any names, but like businesses that internationally you've heard of. And in my first class, all these totally professional looking Chilean women came in for their class. I'd never met them before. I was new to the country and I was expecting to shake hands. Nope. They came up and kissed me on the cheek.
Whoa.
And I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah, it's like, that's my personal space, but I'll give you a pass for that.
I learned something and I really, really like it. So, and by the way, this is before I met my wife.
There we go. Exactly. Thank you.
I can talk about.
No, of course. We got to put those disclaimers because now everything can be chopped or clipped, and we want to.
They'll do fake news and.
Something that I have to ask you when it comes to, because we have this in common, right? And I told you before recording, but here we go. And it goes like this. For example, for me, or like in South America, Japan is huge, and maybe in the whole planet, right? So when it comes to like culture shock or things that people want to know or ask, and I think this could also happen with other cultures, please let us know in the comments if this happens to you, your partner, your country, because I don't know. I'm just talking, like you said, from my experience. Sometimes I would have people around me, friends or people that have met me, and they go, oh, is your wife Japanese? Oh, cool. Do you talk to her in Japanese? And as you know, I'm a big language nerd and I love Japanese. So I've been studying for a long time. And it was just a coincidence that my wife happens to be there. But then, it's funny because I would get certain questions and my response is like, mate or dude, she's not an alien,
Yeah.
It's like she's just a girl. She likes having coffee, she likes to catch up with friends, she likes to take photos. It's not as if I'm with an alien, So, I don't know if, but because for Latinos, it's like we have all these ideas of Japan is the future, it's like Futurama, technology, this and that, they communicate, they're like a walking calculator. I don't know if that's only like a Latino thing, or maybe like if Aussies have got something similar to that.
I'm not sure if it would be quite so pronounced in Australia, just because Australia tends to be, it's a very multicultural, or at least we like to think of ourselves as really multicultural and very worldly, and we know about different countries and cultures. I think the question I get mostly is, oh, your wife's Japanese, oh, you've got kids, what do you speak at home? And I have to be then I have to make the embarrassing admission that my Japanese is embarrassingly bad. But I also say, well, her English is fantastic. So, however, when she makes shopping lists, and she's going to be annoyed at me for sharing this, but I haven't said her name, so it's fine. She has never spelt the word sauce the same way twice. Like some days it'll be SAURSE, some days it'll be SORCE, some day. Every combination of letters that you could phonetically make the sound sauce with, she's done that, but like spelt it correctly maybe 3 times out of 150.
For anyone listening, and this is just to defend her, okay, in case she's watching. It's tricky because in English you have so many different ways to write sauce, whereas in Japanese it's like 2 sounds. It's like very straightforward, almost like Spanish in that sense.
Yeah, and one line out of place. That's a different word. That doesn't make any sense at all.
Interesting. It's funny because one thing that I've noticed is like me. I hope my wife it's okay with me telling this, but I would talk to her in Spanish. I mean, I go by seasons. It's like a roller coaster. Sometimes I'm really intense. Other times I'm like, okay, maybe way more relaxed. But it's funny because she would talk to me sometimes, and then one time she would be like telling me something, and then she goes, abrazo. And for those of you who speak Spanish, abrazo means hug. So as soon as she says abrazo, it's like she's in the middle of telling me something, and then she's like abrazo, and I just go, I hug her, and her face is like, WTF, no. And I was like, okay, sorry. And this is after, many years. And then she goes, blah, 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 abrazo. And I was like about to hug, and she's like, no. And I'm like, what do you want to say? And then she's like, habla. And then, you said habla. So she would mix up habla with abrazo, which is, very cute. So yeah, it's interesting because sometimes I guess you would have those things, and that has happened to me many times too. I would say a word in Japanese. I cannot even tell you an exact word, but I would be so confident. I'm going to get blah, blah, blah. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, it's blah, blah, blah. And then when I check, I was wrong. So it's like, oh, I'm sorry. So it happens both ways.
Oh, absolutely. I've told you stories of where I've been like really confidently said a word to, for example, a native Spanish speaker, and they're like, no, that doesn't mean what you think it means.
And, thinking of, obviously language could be a problem. You mentioned a key thing, like her English being really good. I think usually if you're with someone from another country, there has to be a means to communicate.
Oh, no question.
So sometimes I give a lot of, I push a bit and I tell my wife, oh, just talk to me in Japanese. And she's like, yeah, but we can't just talk in English. And I guess that could be a good argument to be said, with any partner. And sometimes that could be a push, right?
So with you and your partner, do you default to English most of the time unless you're consciously deciding, okay, we're going to have this conversation in Japanese or we're going to have this conversation in Spanish?
I feel bad because I guess I've pushed it so much so to the point that it's like more of a mix. But usually if it is like something complicated like a law or a visa or, anything along those lines, like, I don't know, anything to do with like bank investing or money, I don't know, those type of topics or politics, I could do it in Japanese, but I have to like really push myself. I'm at that stage where I would be pushing myself, but then I'm not. It would be good if, sometimes she would come back to me in Japanese with that, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, just tell me however makes you happy because, I'm not going to be arguing just because you didn't or you did talk to me. Yeah. But I guess to answer your question, I guess it's not like we say, oh, let's do that. I guess with Spanish, I would do it. I would be like, I'll talk to you in Spanish for X amount of time, or let me tell you this in Spanish. Or sometimes I would be so annoying. I wonder if other people do this. I would listen to her and I'm like, now can you please tell me in your language or in Japanese? And yeah, sometimes it can be, sometimes she would do it and other times I'm like, okay, sorry, I'm not going to start, World War III now because of a language question. Another thing, communication. I guess that's probably a key thing. Would you say, I get a feeling that it may or may not be, no, sorry. I was going to say that it could be a potential quote unquote disadvantage if you are not with someone from your country, But I would argue that as long as you keep communication as clear as possible, and there is mutual understanding. I mean, it may never get to the same level, but I'm really happy with, let's say, or how far we have gone in terms of communication-wise, you know?
Yeah, look, that actually kind of brings me back to something I mentioned. Like, you know, I said at the start of our relationship there was some, you know, some growing and some things to work out in terms. So early on, there would be times when my wife and I would, as you kind of out of nowhere for me, we would just erupt into these huge fights because I had been doing something that was really pissing her off for like a few weeks, and I didn't know, and because of her culture and having those really direct confrontations is not really a thing.
Yeah.
She would sit on it and sit on it and sit on it, and I would keep pissing her off and doing the same thing, being oblivious, and then suddenly we're having this massive fight. She's furious. I mean, I was being annoying, but
you didn't know you were being annoying.
No. And I was like, why are you so angry? And then she would say, look, you know, basically, I've been, and even when I didn't know how annoying I was being, like she had told me, hey, I don't like it when you do this. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I'd forget or not take it seriously enough. And so she would just build that pressure and pressure and pressure. And then we'd have these. But so the way we've moved from that is I've made it clear that you can call me out like early.
Exactly. Don't let it build up.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm driving you crazy or I'm doing something that you find really uncool or really disrespectful or just that I'm not listening to you enough, handle that sooner rather than later. And she's really, really good with that now. And I don't remember the last time we had a really big fight about anything.
I think that's a big culture shock because, you know, for a Latina, it would be like, hey, Tomas, don't do that. I'll get angry. We would tell you right from, I mean, it's like we don't even let you...
The moment it happens.
Yeah, we wouldn't even let you finish that thing or whatever it is. It's like, exactly. It's like, no, do it again and you'll see. Kudos to our Latinos. And, you know, I always said that a base in any relationship, because again, this person asked, talk a bit about having a partner from a different culture, being in Australia. I think I would argue that the base of any relationship has to be respect.
No question.
What do you think about that?
No question. I think the basis of any relationship, romantic or otherwise, is, yeah, I mean, if you don't view them as an equal or view a person or a friend as someone who has as much validity as you and has, that's not a relationship. That's going to wind up being like a servant master sort of thing, or that's not a relationship I'm interested in having with anybody, romantic or otherwise.
I mean, I totally agree. You couldn't have put it any better. Another thing that gets me thinking is the fact that, you know, when I think about, not necessarily my wife, or when I think about being with someone from another country, I have this concept. I don't know if I've heard it anywhere. Maybe I'm paraphrasing. And if anyone have listened to it, please let us know if you know about this. But it's the idea of like picking your fights. And what I mean by that is that, for example, in Japan, look, I'm a weird Latino. I'm going to, you know, expose myself here. Comparing like Japanese sticky rice with like, let's say, long grain, more spreaded rice, you know, like let's say what you would see in India or like in Thailand.
Sure.
That's like the type of rice. Well, you know, you lived in Chile, but I still have to say it, right? I like that rice, but
You like long grain rice?
Yeah, but I would much rather have Japanese rice.
Yeah.
If I get the option to choose,
Yeah,
you know?
you put two bowls in front of you.
So this is why I'm saying, like, for you guys, take this with a pinch of salt. I'm a bad Latino, I know. But if I think like a super traditional Latino, I would be like, because I know people from South America and from Venezuela and everywhere, different countries who would be like, I don't like sticky rice all the time. But then, I mean, and if that had happened to me, or I would be like, oh, damn, this would be so annoying because it's like, I mean, I'm not going to say we eat rice every day, but it's like extremely frequent, okay?
In Japan?
No, in Japan and here. I mean, in Japan, we would have rice like maybe every single meal, like the whole time.
Like 2 out of 3.
100%, and many times 3 out of 3. And then here, it's like, I mean, as in, it could be the lead up of an argument, or like what you were saying, like something that annoys you that is going to be, you know, picking there, like poking you every single day. It's like, okay, I want to have long grain rice, but my partner wants to have this other rice. Luckily, I like the short grain rice, and a part of me is like, it's okay, either or. So yeah, I think it's tricky, you know.
You know what?
That could be tricky. So
I think with food, that's a real thing. Like there'll be times when, for example, if I've done, say, 80+% of the cooking on a particular week, you know, I'm cooking the dishes that, you know, I'm cooking for the family. I want everybody to enjoy it. But if, you know, you cook stuff that you like, and there's going to be a point, and it's the same in reverse. Like if Yuki's cooked a lot, for example, I'll explain it this way. When we were in Japan, we were in Japan over the last school holidays, and the food's amazing, right? But it got to about, I don't know, about the 5th or 6th day, and I just wanted to eat something gross and Western. Like I just wanted to eat something.
How Western, Tom? Wait.
You know what I did? I got a bowl of pasta, and I got a pizza on the side, and I dipped the pizza in the pasta. I just wanted these dirty fat carbs.
Whoa, okay.
Which, because you just don't get in Japan, and my dumb Western body was like, you got to eat something greasy right now. But yeah, like Yuki will very vocally say, I don't want, you know, I don't want any more Western food for a couple of days, or I want, you know, rice and Asian vegetables. I want something with, you know, that has, you know, cooking sake in it.
Of course, no, and you know it's funny you mentioned that because I had something similar. Like when we went on our honeymoon, we went to Europe, and especially in Germany, because I think in maybe this would be like day 5, we happened to find it's like being in Geelong in Germany, let's say, like a tiny town, and we found this Venezuelan restaurant.
What?
How random! I was with one of my mates who, you know, when I moved to Australia, he moved to Germany. And I was like, how sick. High school friend who lives in Germany, Venezuelan restaurant. I'm going to Venezuela in a month. And then I was like, okay, maybe, I don't know, let's get an arepa or something, right? And then I looked at my wife's face and she's angry, bro. And I'm like, I know she's angry and I know she's not gonna tell me. So I'm like doing all the math, I'm remembering the whole day, and I'm like, boom. It's like when you put an Excel formula, enter. I'm like, she's not angry with me. It's not me. And then
And not about the restaurant.
Exactly. No. So, and then she just said, oh, I want to have this, which is to my Venezuelans watching, is pabellón criollo. So she wanted to have like pabellón. That's like bandeja paisa.
Oh, yeah.
In Colombia, right? So she wanted to have bandeja paisa. And then, you know, I'm going to order it. And then she says, like the lady says to me, look, sorry, we don't have it. And then she just said to me, Ale, I want rice. And then it clicked because we had been living in Japan, having rice 3 times a day, every single day for 4 months. And then we go to Germany and it's all bread, sausage, cheese, bread,
total
potato bread.
Withdrawal.
And then she told me like, I'm Japanese. She was like, soy japonesa. I need rice. And then it's like, oh, okay. So I just, you know, called the waiter and I was like, please bring my wife rice. But it's gonna look, do whatever you have to do. Go and get it in the farm. I will wait, but please bring us bring us pabellón, bring us bandeja paisa, and then that was so good. But yeah, I think with food, every quick tip, and I don't know if you agree with this, but it could be unpopular opinion. Every couple should have like a document. If you're with someone who is from a different culture, and you have to like agree on what foods you're gonna have, because otherwise it's gonna be like a never-ending fight.
I think that's possible. Doesn't matter if you're from the same culture or otherwise. Like,
well, true.
Like, you remember during COVID, like no one's going out, so everyone's we were certainly cooking at home 7 nights a week. And the thing for both of us that we just got was one of the hardest things in lockdown was having to think every day. What do you want for dinner? Oh, I don't know. I don't want to think about it.
Yeah.
Do you want to just do this? No, we had that 3 nights ago. And like, you run out of your repertoire, and then, you know, one person just wants the easy thing that's fine for them. If you suggest that, we're going to have a fight.
Yeah. Do you really want to have that?
Is it worth it?
And I think, yeah, that's I think a good way to put it. Like when I say pick your fights, it's like there are going to be things like from our cultures that you really, I mean, I guess we will all have our must-haves. And then you just have to argue. I guess the problem becomes when like the must-haves are very, you know, tight, I would say.
I mean, yeah, if they're non-negotiables, then
Exactly. Then it becomes a bit of a problem, I suppose. But and then it's all about like finding a midpoint, maybe, or
yeah, I mean, if your must-have is I must have rice, that's fine. We can have rice on the side, and that problem solved. But like, you know, if my wife came to me to say, actually, one of my non-negotiables is my husband must make $250,000 a year, we're going to have a big problem because that's not happening.
not yet, not yet.
No, not anytime soon.
And that's a good point. I think also, I mean, we talked about the non-negotiables, but another one could be just basically being open-minded, right? I mean, we haven't touched up on that. I think being open-minded and understanding that things will be different can get you a long way, don't you think?
Yeah, and typically, like, being open-minded means that you get to discover new things together, and you're like, oh, did you like that? I like that. We like that. Hey, that's a cool thing we learned that we like together. And yeah, not like, look, I'll put it this way. I don't think even the most open-minded person in the world, there are going to be things about cultures outside of your own that you're just like, I'm fine that they do it. I'm really glad I don't have to do that.
True.
In my own culture. Like for me, it's in Japan, it's the taking off your shoes everywhere. In people's homes, absolutely fine. Totally get it. But when I have to take off my shoes to try on a shirt in Uniqlo, come on, man.
That's like too much Japanese-ness.
Yeah. Let's just dial that back. And I hope our Japanese friends out there understand that I love Japan. That's just a bit much for me.
You know, I guess another big point to mention is that this reminds me of the phrase, in Rome, be as Romans. Oh, sorry.
When in Rome, do as the Romans do.
Thank you. You know, it's funny because like when I'm in Japan, sometimes I try to I increase my Japanese-ness, and my wife would be like, we might be at a family dinner, or like we would be with her parents, and it's like, hey, be funny, tell a joke. And I'm like, this is not joke time. We're in Japan. And then she's like, okay, you're adapting too well. So don't do that. Be Latino. Tell a joke. Be funny. So I don't know. I take that sometimes to not only Japan, but any country I go. And I think that could be a thing to be said, right? Like if anyone watching is maybe with an Aussie, do you think there might be certain things that would be good to do if a partner, someone is dating someone from Australia, or maybe is with an Aussie maybe?
Here in Australia?
Yeah.
Look, I think Australians are pretty relaxed. I don't think we're very precious about, you know, our cultures and stuff. Like if you put mustard on a meat pie, I think people look at you a bit funny. But I think a criticism I have of Australians more generally is like we are used to people, you know, migrating here and making these multicultural communities. But you often read those that for me are really embarrassing stories about Australians, like going to Bali and like leaving beer bottles all over the beach and just generally being
a bad tourist.
Terrible tourists and horrible to the locals, and like, you know, you make us all look bad. You're like a cyclist with no helmet, you know? Like, don't do that, because now if I go there, they're going to think, oh, he's Australian. He's going to be like those, you know, drunken bogan idiots.
True. I guess that's, I suppose, the beginning of a negative stereotype, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, if that's the only thing a person has to have is experience about your own culture, and they've got no other information to feed off, it's going to create a bad impression. I mean, we hope, right, that everybody goes, okay, I met 2 Australians and they were awful. I'm pretty sure not every one of the 26 million Australians is going to be an awful person.
True.
You hope, but I mean, yeah, if you had a bad experience with someone and that's the only experience you have, it's not going to make you go, well, I really want to do that again.
Before talking a bit about Aussies, I've got a bit of an example of something that drives my wife crazy. But before I tell you that, you know, I remember a phrase, I think in Spanish I mean, I heard it from, well, I think I don't know if you've met this friend. Anyways, it's something along the lines of, in Australia, like, tall fences make good neighbors. Can you, again, please tell us, because I know I'm not...
Tall fences make good neighbors, that's it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And I think the idea of that, I mean, or like the way sometimes we as Latinos might take it, is that sometimes it's good to distance yourself a bit. Could you tell us a bit about that? Because I get a feeling that if someone is with an Aussie, I don't know if that is something that people should consider or to think about when, being with someone from here?
Look, I mean, I am an Aussie and I'm familiar with that expression. I can say from my own point of view as an Aussie, yeah, I don't necessarily want to have a super duper close relationship with my neighbours just because they are my neighbours. Like, just because they happen to live next to me doesn't mean we're going to be great friends. But I also want to have a cordial relationship with them. Like, I don't want any tension or anything. But look, and this is going to be lost on our audio only listeners, but for our visual people, the way I've often sort of described the continuum, shall we say, between Latin American culture, Australian culture, and let's say for this example, Japanese culture, is we've got Latin American culture here, Japanese culture here, and Australia is kind of somewhere in the middle. Think about it like Australian food. There's no real thing that you can point at that go, that's Australian food. What it is we've borrowed what we hope are the best parts of everyone else's and the British.
Trying to pick up the best from every country.
Well, that's certainly what we do with the food. I'm not sure about the culture. But yeah, like we're certainly more reserved than you Latinos, but we're, I would say, generally speaking, more relaxed and relaxed than traditionally you would imagine Japanese culture to be.
Interesting. Look, that's a good point. I guess it's just that, I thought at the end of the day, I think it comes down to also knowing the person, right? And also knowing how to adjust yourself. But I thought it would be interesting to ask. And again, good expression, good vocab there. But look, the thing that drives my wife crazy, because I wonder if my wife is going to get this right. So it is very simple. It's like something that I love about Australia. And it is that you can return a product that is not fit for purpose, it doesn't work properly, and you can return it. And my wife has a mini heart attack. I mean, now she's very used to me returning certain things. And now it became even a joke in my family. It's like, oh, yes, I am Mr. Return. But then I remember being in Japan, and I bought a pair of gloves in Uniqlo. And I said to her, look, I'm really sorry. I have to return them. And then she's like, you're on your own, man. This is like a very risky mission.
Really?
And yeah, because she's like, I'm not going with you, because for them it's like super embarrassing
the loss of face thing.
Yeah. So it's like, no, I'm not going with you to tell the store manager that something happened to the gloves. And I just told her, look, it's just I get really cold hands. I got the extra super heat tech new technology, and I'm still freezing. So if I'm going to be freezing, I would rather be freezing with the extra money in my pocket than with the gloves, So, and then she's like, you know what? Your Japanese is good enough. Go and return it. Good luck. Funny enough, it worked. So, but don't try it, okay? If you go to Japan, don't try returning things unless it's really bad. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because sometimes when I would return something, she's like, oh, but then I'm like, but hey, look, we're in Australia. We can do it, So sometimes I guess you play the culture card, and I guess it could be useful in certain situations, right?
Yeah.
When you are with someone from another country, if it's someone from your country, then it's like, you can't do, I mean, it's like there is a mutual understanding.
Sure.
You know what I mean? As in you have like that pass of, it's similar to saying like, I have the tourist card, or I have the, which I think it's like it's a funny / cool perk that you can play when you've got someone that is your significant other being from a different culture.
Yeah, or just being in a different culture. Like, nobody's going to be furious with you because, like, for me, like, if I want to count in Japan, I can never remember the count number, so I just say, ni biru.
Oh, okay.
I mean, my Japanese is not that bad, but the count numbers drive me crazy.
Look, something that I also wanted to say is that I think maybe this could be more for someone who's like, let's say, the typical Aussie person that has never learned another language. Something that I think was interesting was that in one of my trips to China, right, I did a study tour there, and one of the girls was very, let's say, strict. She was expecting everyone in China to speak English. And she was like, oh, can you please translate this? And I was struggling with the dictionary.
So she was
She was Aussie. She was an English speaker from Australia. And she's like, oh, for example, we go to like a little shop, right? Because this was in Wuhan. And just to give you context, it's not like the biggest, it's not like Shanghai, yeah? So I was like, I want to buy, and I'm trying to pronounce yogurt, and I was so confused. It's like, it was a big challenge back then. It took me like 10 minutes to find yogurt. And then she's like, can you please check if it is fat-free with blah, 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 with no... And I was like, mate, it took me 10 minutes to say yogurt. You want me to ask if it is 2% fat-free? Good luck. But then as time passed by, she had like that mini check of, hey, not everybody speaks English. And then she was extremely, she told me, she did say like, I feel so bad. I've been so tough to international students, to other people in Australia that English is not the first language. So I do get a feeling that by being with someone from another country, from an Aussie, right, is maybe that eye-opening experience of, oh, wow, there is a completely different world out there. And I mean, in your case, like you have studied Japanese, so you know how hard it is to do the backflip, to be like from Japanese, or let's say in this case with Spanish, into English. It's like it's not easy. So
I also think that there's a particular, and I'm not trying to, be unnecessarily critical of English speakers, but there is a thing, particularly with English in Australia and even around the world, because English is such a dominant language in countries like Australia, where it is the dominant language. There's that expectation that everybody speaks English, right? Like, well, no.
yeah,
And so, and what visitors to Australia who maybe don't speak English that much don't get is that recognition and the acknowledgement that they've tried. Whereas in Japan, even with my very, very basic Japanese, people were so impressed and so grateful that I had made the effort. And that relationship doesn't work the other way, and it should. So people with more basic English, it's not your fault. It's people not realizing how difficult it is when they should realize.
true. And I guess like having that chance or that opportunity for Aussies to meet people from other countries, or even, I mean, I've heard, from different people saying like, oh yeah, I hadn't been overseas or I hadn't learned the language. Then I met my partner. OMG. Exactly. It's like, so it's so hard. And yeah, I think that's such an eye-opening experience. And it's funny, I like how you mentioned that example. You're right. In Japan, you could be like, sushi kudasai. Kudasai means please. And sometimes it's like, your Japanese is amazing. But then the reverse is like, if you come to Australia, what I tell Japanese students, or like even students, is like, people will expect you to, because English is, as you said, so dominant. It's like, and then you're like, please repeat. Oh my God, he didn't get it. But then it's like, then a part of me is like, the Latino side is like, come to my country. Yeah. I give you 6 months, bro. Come to my country. And then I'll talk to you like I talk to my friend, and then we'll see. So I guess that's a real thing. And a funny cultural thing, I don't know, what do you think about this? Is that, I like that how you were saying, like, in Japan, people don't expect you to speak Japanese. In here, we expect you, or people in Australia expect that you speak. And in Spain, in Venezuela, or like South America, let's say, we don't care. We just talk to you. If you get it, that's cool. If you don't get it, we will tell you again.
Louder.
Yeah, because I remember like after being to different countries, like people would talk to my wife like, and then she's like blank face. And then before I was about to say something, it's like the person would look at me like, oh, she doesn't speak Spanish, right? I'm like, no idea. I mean, like I just say poquito, like a little bit, So I think that's an interesting difference, don't you reckon?
Yeah, absolutely. When I first arrived in Chile, I was on a train station platform, and this old woman came up to me and asked me for directions. And in my very, very basic Spanish, correctly gave her directions. So she decided, oh, cool, he's Chileno. And she just blasted super fast Chilean Spanish at me. I was like, no. You've grossly overestimated how well I can do this. But she didn't care. She was like, just rapid fire Spanish in my face, and then she went on her way.
Tricky. Now that you mentioned rapid fire Spanish, I had it written down, so I have to ask you. The reverse would happen. What about rapid fire English? Because I've heard from couples or like from Aussies, people that have, come out here on the internet and have said like, when I talk to my partner who's Australian, either, boy or girl, then it's all good But as soon as we talk to their family or their friends, man, that's like another level. I don't know. Just wondering.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Do you agree?
Totally, and on both sides of it. So if you guys, listening to me and my Aussie friends have a conversation, I can't understand a single word you're saying. But the same way, her best friend who lives in Japan went. I find really easy to understand when I'm speaking to her, but when my wife and her best friend get together in a conversation, it's impossible for me. I might be able to. I think there's somebody mentioned food somewhere in there, but I'm just got no chance of keeping up.
What would you say? Now we have to bring our English teaching powers. What would you say to someone listening, going, my boyfriend or my husband or my girlfriend, my wife is Aussie. I want to improve my English and I get shy, or I don't know, or like it's tough because I just don't get it. What would you? I've got a bit of a theory, but you're the guest.
Okay.
So what do you think?
Okay, here's what not to do.
Okay, good.
Okay, if your partner is not a trained language teacher, do not ask them grammar questions. They don't know.
That's bullseye. Okay, please keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Like you could say to your partner, when do we use present perfect? When do we use past simple? And your non-language trained partner is going to say, what is that? Because native speakers don't have to think about that. So don't get grammar advice from untrained native speakers. Vocab, great. If they can give you examples, even better. But grammar, don't do it. They don't know.
That's so true. And usually, I'm gonna bring up here. I'm so happy. I love when I say this. It's like, and my wife now picked this up, and she's been telling me this now. In Spanish we say "por qué," why, and instead of saying because, which I think is beautiful, we say "porque sí." So it's like there is no answer. It's like why, because, yes, that's it. So it's like, why do you say that? Porque sí. That's it. We say it. That's all you need to know. And then check and move on. And now sometimes I've been, I would ask my wife something. And it's like, ¿por qué? And she's like, porque sí. And I'm like, whoa. It's like a reverse shock. It's like, oh, okay. So is this how it feels when we say it?
Yes.
So that's a good point.
But I mean, for partners of Aussie people who want to improve your English, I mean, without asking them explicit grammar questions, your partner is your best resource because they're the person that you can make mistakes in front of and they're not going to shame you for them. It's a really, really safe place to practice. I mean, if you really want to improve your English, I understand that Emilio provides a number of excellent language teaching services.
You want to make me blush live. Oh my God.
I don't know. I've heard he's pretty massive on the internet, so maybe check that out. But look, the usual channels. Enroll in some classes. Don't feel like you have to go and be able to converse immediately with strangers outside of your household totally confidently. No one can do that. It's not a thing. So ease yourself, a little bit outside your comfort zone as you can. Talk to your partner. Don't ask them grammar questions, and yeah.
I'm going to add up to that. I don't know if this is, I'll tell you what worked for me. True story. The first time I met my wife's best friend, we went to have dinner. We basically had dinner in one of these Italian restaurants here in the city. I think it's the Grapes Street.
Uh-huh.
So I introduced myself. Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Emilio. So good to see you. As soon as we started, or they started talking, bro, I remember that I finished that dinner. It was like an hour and a half, and my head was like, I felt my forehead was gonna explode. Exactly. So I was like, and then she's like, "Oh, it was so good." And I was like, "Thank you, but no, I don't want. Don't talk to me." It's like, no Japanese, shut down. we closed today. We open up tomorrow, 9 a.m. But it was good. I told her, look, it was. I don't know if this is just me being again a bit of a nerd, but a part of me is like, rather than being, damn, I cannot understand, I shifted to, how much can I get from this? And I think that difference in the mindset really helped. And a part of me thought, I don't have to get everything. I mean, obviously, you know, when you think about like, a part of me thought back then, and I still think the same, you know, now that I'm getting ready for like the Japanese proficiency test, it's like, I don't get that in an exam. So I'm just trying to go with the conversation, grab and absorb as much as I can, and be patient with myself. It's almost like the same with any sport, right? It's like if you start running, you're not going to run a marathon in your third go, you know, or like in your first, I don't know, 3 months. Maybe you can, but you're going to, you know, you could hurt yourself. And I guess it could be the same thing with like that headache thing. So fast forward to today and lots of those meetings, and then, you know, catching up and me talking to the friend. And now I can confidently say that I would argue, well, not argue, I would say that I can understand when they talk on their own easily, 90%. Is it like, oh, second nature, like in Spanish? Obviously not. You know, I'm not here being like, oh, I'm so great, look at me.
But that's the thing.
I still have to really like focus, but it's like, do, and I'm getting lots of info.
Key stuff. And in a native language, you don't listen to 100% of what someone's saying anyway. You listen for the key parts, and you piece it together in between. You make those logical jumps. So, which, as you said, it's a great way to build up your kind of listening fluency, and you do it bit by bit. And if you don't get it all, nobody dies, so it's fine.
True. Look, now that we're talking about language advice, I guess something that it's important to mention. I think I've touched up on this in previous episodes, but you know, again, you are Aussie, so you are the expert in this. And it is this cultural thing where obviously the non-native English speaker wants to improve his or her English, right? So it's like, oh, please correct me if I'm wrong. And normally I would tell students the opposite. It's like, don't ask people that, because Aussies are more on the polite side. We would correct you in South America, right? I mean, or any Spanish speaker, I'm sure we will correct you, but you have to say something bad. Or you need to be completely wrong.
Right.
Whereas if we sort of know what you're trying to say, oh, yeah, cool, and then we move on. We're not going to be like, oh, you misconjugated the verb, or oh, you said something completely off. And I think in Australia, that's like that on steroids, because there are so many languages, so many accents, so many different people. So it's like, he or she got it? Okay, cool, move on. I'm not going to be like, oh, blah, 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 you made a mistake mispronouncing this.
And that's actually extra true the more proficient a speaker becomes, because, you know, at the lower level, when you're starting out, of course, you make a lot more mistakes. So your meanings can be less clear more often and stuff. But once learners of any language get to a certain level, the mistakes become much less of an obstacle to meaning. So people stop correcting you.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I knew it. As you said, like, okay, that subject-verb agreement was a little bit off, but I know exactly what you're talking about. So it's not worth interrupting the flow of the conversation to say, oh, by the way.
Exactly. Or like, oh, I don't know, I'm just going to put this like essay type of English, like, oh, you should have used although, but you used however. I mean, you said however like 2 sentences ago, so that's not very good. I mean, no one's going to tell you that.
No, it gets really nitpicky, and it's not worth it, because if the meaning's clear, then, yeah, don't interrupt the conversation to say, hey, to point out a mistake that didn't have any meaningful impact on communication.
Unless then again we have your your funny example of like, I think it was no, of course I remember you were saying olivas, right? And then
aceitunas.
Exactly. I'm sure like the OGs from the podcast will know about that joke, but again, can you summarize that story?
Sure. So again, I feel like I told a lot of stories from when I was in Chile today, but I found this pizza place that I really, really liked. And the first time I ordered, it was a pizza and it had lots of olives on it. And I don't like olives. So the next time I went back, I just kind of guessed. I thought this was a reasonable guess at a cognate between English and Spanish. In English, olives. And I'd seen the word olivas in Spanish. So I thought, okay, I'm going to ask for my pizza sin olivas, which I thought meant without olives. Anyway, came out with olives on it again. And the same thing happened like the next 3 or 4 times I went to this. And finally the waiter came out after he brought me the pizza with olives on it again, and he saw me pulling the olives off, and he said, sin aceitunas. I was like, is that what you call them?
Exactly.
Because olivas is olive oil, right?
Yeah, or you say like aceite de oliva. Only there, you wouldn't say aceite de aceituna. Yeah, that would sound so strange.
But yeah, and or like when you make a really bad mistake. When I in Spanish wanted to say, I'm embarrassed, so I said estoy embarazado.
Yeah, we would tell you on the spot.
Yeah,
It
and
has
they
to-
did. They said no. Embarazado is also, well, for one thing, impossible, but means you're pregnant. And I'm like, oh no, that's
That's not what I want to say.
that's not, no. Yeah, thanks for pulling me up on that one.
And I guess we could say that in Australia, like, it would need to be something like that bad, you know?
Yeah.
If it is something like where the meaning could go like up to that level, then yes, someone will tell you like, hey, no, don't say that, or blah, blah, blah. This or that is not cool.
I have actually another story exactly like that. Again, when I was teaching in Chile, one of my students, a woman, came up and she had cold sore. And in English, it's a cold sore, but in Spanish, it's herpes.
Yeah.
And she came and said, I have herpes.
Oh,
Don't.
tell me. Wait, because for you, wait.
For me, that
have
was
a
new.
moment. Yeah, because I thought herpes might be for you, like, I don't know, down there.
Well, that's exactly where my mind went, and that's
Oh.
where like 99% of English speakers would go like, and she said it like with a smile, like, oh, isn't it? This is kind of annoying. I have herpes. Oh, cold. I mean, and technically, it's that virus family, but
That's
I had to say,
crazy.
don't say that to a native English, to any English speaker,
I
because
guess,
they will
like-
not think of your face.
Yeah, I guess you must have had like the craziest thought, like, this is overly honest.
Yeah, right. Like, wow, that's really open.
Yeah.
And then I realized, I made the connection because it's in the same family, but no, so I had to have a bit of a sit down with her and explain why
You know,
probably want to avoid that.
One that has happened to former students and, friends, people sometimes have asked me about this, and it is like the C word, How do you say? So I'm like, look, you know what? What's the phrase I'm using, like all these things, don't fix what's broken. Sorry, don't fix what's not broken, right?
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
So I'm like, I just say cannot. That's it. They will get it, because you want to avoid any, so cannot. I cannot go. That's it. So it's like, don't use the contraction if you want to be on the safe side.
Say, I am unable to.
Exactly. There you go. Improving your skills. No, that's interesting. And, Tom, I mean, one thing coming back to, like being with someone from overseas, I'm sure that people will like those tips. Let us know. Let us know if you have done any of these. And, I'm just wondering, what about like family? Any comments on that? Like, because, I assume, or we may assume that Aussies are very open to that. It's like very common. Obviously, I guess it may depend, but in your experience, how was it? Because, say, for example, in my case, it was like, oh, that's so cool. I also don't know if it is because it's Japan and, Japan, putting World War II on the side. It's like, oh, sushi, Toyota. It's like all these nice, cool things. Whereas if, sometimes when we say, oh, he's from Venezuela, usually it's like, where is that? Or, oh, So I don't know if it is like a Japan thing, but I don't know, in that topic, what do you think, or how has your experience been?
I mean, my experience with my wife's family has been great, but I think, you can't choose your families. People's experiences, even within their own family, let alone merging two families can be just wildly different. I don't think I can say anything intelligent or even generalize about what people might be able to expect, because some people's families are crazy. Some people's are nice. Some people, yeah. Some people's families are just like, how do you live like this?
Have you ever had any like culture shock with family? It could be either hers or yours. I'll give you an example, because I'm laughing when my brother went to Japan last year. For example, we went to Uniqlo, right? And something about Japan is that usually they would normally put all the stock outside, so like on the shelf for you to see it. And in Japan, it's not like in here where you can just be like, oh, can you check if you have something at the back, right? So I had that conversation. You have like a 5-minute exchange conversation. You can make it a lot shorter, but because, I try to blend in and be as Japanese as I can, it becomes a long conversation. My brother comes with me to Uniqlo, and he's like, oh, I want to get that shirt. And I'm like, they don't have it. How do you know? Maybe they can check at the back. And I'm like, no, bro. It's not. We're in Japan. No. And then he's like, damn, I wish I could speak Japanese. If I could only speak Japanese, I would ask by myself. Damn, I have to be asking you. And I'm like, okay, man, okay. I hate you do that, but okay. And then I'm like, sumimasen. And then I ask, do we have this t-shirt? Can you check if we have it at the back? And then,
yeah, of course, no.
It's exactly, of course, no. So it's like, no, sorry, we don't have it. And then I bow back. Oh, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry that you're sorry. I'm going to go to the back and check. And I'm like, no, don't worry. If you don't have it, it's okay. No. I'm sorry that you're sorry that I'm sorry. Let me run to the back. And then he's like, okay, so she's going to check, right? I'm like, she's going to check, but she's going to be back in like 3 minutes and she's going to apologize again. And then she would come back and be like, I'm really sorry. I checked, but I don't have it. But I can check in another store. And my brother is like, bro, if they don't have it, let's go. I'm like, we can't go. And he's like, why? We're being impolite. So then I have to stay and be like apologizing. I apologize to make you go and check for the shirt. And then it's like a whole, and he was like, and then from that experience, he was like, whenever I said yes or no, I mean, 80% of the time he would listen to me. He's like, okay, cool, we're here. So that was like a very funny, but this is like going as a tourist, not much with family, but I guess it's culture related.
Sure. I really don't think. I mean, I think maybe it's just I've been really lucky. Like my family and my wife's family, they get on really well. Every time my wife's family comes here, we all have dinner together. We exchange gifts and stuff. And same, I mean, my parents have stayed without me and my wife, but have just traveled to Japan and met up with my wife's parents.
No way.
Yeah. Even without us. So I've been really lucky, and I can't speak with any accuracy on anybody else's experience, but mine's been overwhelmingly positive because they're good people. I think my mum and dad are pretty good people, and they're respectful of each other. And I think they also have similar values. You know, they're interested. They value education and talking about politics, and so just lucky. But I could not speak in any general way about what to expect with mixing your, multicultural families. Like, just have a crack, but good luck, I guess.
Exactly. Good luck, and just be extra open-minded, explaining things. Oh, Tom, look, it's been an amazing episode, and I'm sure we could keep going, but we're getting close to the end. And as always, the spotlight is on you. We touched up on different things. So any final message you would like to share to anyone listening? And again, potentially someone thinking of, maybe improving his or her English, or someone who is, maybe with an Aussie, because, lots of our listeners are, here based in Australia.
All right, sure.
Or I don't know, go for it.
Yeah.
The stage is yours.
I'm going to, so I've been with my wife now for nearly 13 years, and I really didn't make any effort to really learn Japanese properly until a couple of years ago, because it just looked like too much of a mountain to climb. And I knew I was always guilty. Like, I knew, come on, dude, like her English is excellent. She's put in all that effort to learn English. You can do that. And so I did. And what I found very, very quickly is, and I remember having the same experience when I started learning Spanish, once you get past that mental barrier of going, oh my God, it's a whole language. How do you learn a whole language? You don't. You don't learn a whole language. You do a little bit of the hard work and you realize, oh, I can actually do this. I can do this life thing. Like, I can go and ask for XYZ thing at the shop, or I can ask someone how their day was, or how they... Yeah, so if you look at it like, Christ, I've got to climb this mountain, and there's nothing in between 0 and like native proficiency, yeah, you'll never do it. But when you realize that it actually kind of unlocks side missions for you,
yes,
yeah, it's worth it. I mean, yeah, the best, and I'm going to butcher this phrase, but something like the best time to start learning a language is 20 years ago. The second best time is today.
True. And, something that we have, something that as I was listening to you, that really, clicked in, and I think it's interesting to bring it up, is like talking to my mother-in-law. And, it's funny because in Japanese, oftentimes like a word or like very short words or like sentences will have a big meaning. So it's like, how was work? Busy, right? Like isogashi. And I would be like, and then without realizing, but this is just me because I want to talk to her, you know, and then I bring out my Latino side. I'm like, how isogashi? How busy? And then she's like blank for a second. What do you mean, how busy? And I'm like, well, you know, like busy with work, with colleagues, busy with a new task, busy because it was raining. I don't know what type of busy. And then interestingly enough, like, and then funny enough, my father-in-law is like, Emilio, you ask too many questions. But he said it in a funny way, yeah. And then eventually, like after like a week or two of that, she would come home from work and then she would turn into like mini Latina mode, like, hi, I'm back. Hi, Emilio, how are you? Today work was really good and I did this and this and this and this and this. So it's not like she completely changed, but I thought it was so cool seeing how
she accommodated that aspect of your relationship.
Exactly. And I guess obviously, you know, she would know, oh, okay, if I'm talking to Emilio, I can go a bit beyond what I would normally say in a conversation. And I guess like I want to add that as a finishing message because I think one of the coolest things of being with someone from another culture, country, whatever you want to call it, is that you could have the chance to give each other the best from your culture. That's one of the reasons why I think it's so cool. I mean, obviously, you know, I love my culture, but I also love sharing it, you know?
Yes.
So I think there is so much potential there to be said.
Well said.
And well, look, as always, thank you so much for being with us either here on video or it could be on Spotify. And Tom, obviously, you know, thank you for coming. You know, you're a busy man, so it's great to have you here. And who knows, maybe we'll have a part 3. Hopefully not in 2 years. 2 years is a bit of a gap. Yeah. So sooner than later.
Keep the fires burning, man.
And well, this was episode 96 of Teach Emilio podcast. I almost get it wrong. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care and bye for now.
See ya.